Can somebody let Douglas know that I've got a question for him in the chat?
To fix the problem, many in the business community are urging city leaders to tackle issues like climate.
Thank you, Debbie. This is Gabby. I think he's being made aware of the question or the chat. Welcome to those of you joining. Great to see you. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. For those that aren't aware, Jason is with the port, and we're excited to have him. I think Jeff is unavailable tonight, who we normally have. So we're just grateful for having someone else represent the port.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us know, Jess, and welcome, Jason. Nice to meet you virtually.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we will be getting started in a few minutes. This is Gabby, the facilitator for tonight's meeting. So if you need to do anything, grab a glass of water or anything with these last couple of minutes, feel free to do so, and we'll get started right around 5. Welcome, good evening to those of you joining. Hope you're doing well. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. We are getting started as it is right about 5 o'clock. So we are going to get through a couple of kind of housekeeping items as folks are settling in to today's meeting. So good evening again. My name is Gabby Magaña, and I am one of your co-facilitators for the evening from Harder & Company Community Research. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Amy Ramos, who will also be co-facilitating components of today's meeting. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope everybody is having a great start to their month, and wonderful to see so many faces on Zoom after being able to meet in person last month as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And I just want to thank everybody again for your ongoing presence, your input, and your collaboration on the implementation of the AB617 process in the Stockton community in particular. We are incredibly grateful for your leadership, and in this community, we cannot emphasize how important it is to have your voice at the table in this process. So thank you so much for continuing to engage. We know how busy you all are and how many other commitments you have, and so your efforts in engaging in this process do not go unrecognized. Today's agenda is designed to offer an opportunity to reflect on our last in-person meeting, as well as to provide updates on various presentations that were requested as part of our planning session back in March. So as a reminder, to be more inclusive of the agenda setting process, we designed a CSC session back in March, where present CSC members had the opportunity to weigh in on priority topics for the next quarter. So the items you see listed in today's agenda are related to the topics that the CSC identified, including air monitoring and SERP implementation. You will notice there's a slight change in today's agenda between kind of draft and final, with some changes in availability from the Port of Stockton. And so the presentation update from the Port of Stockton will be forthcoming in a future meeting. So just wanted to make you aware of that change. So this agenda is a little bit busier than the in-person meeting, and that's both a result of the planning priorities that arose for this meeting, as well as just an overall understanding that these virtual meetings are more sort of conducive to offering presentations and updates, while in-person meeting engagements are best suited for relationship building, connection, and ideation. So just wanted to kind of draw your attention to the distinction between how we prioritize and distinguish kind of what items get facilitated in different settings too. So before we get started, I want to walk through the meeting logistics. I know that these look familiar, but it's always helpful to have a refresher. So as always, we please ask that you mute yourself unless you're speaking. This helps to reduce any audio feedback. And we also ask that you rename yourself as shown on the screen here. So for CSC members, that's CSC first comma last name. And resident CSC members can use R first comma last name. And any other participants can showcase affiliation to their agencies by noting in the following ways. So Air District or CARB can use AD or CARB. P for general public, and all other organizations, we ask you to please write your name as part, your organizational name as part of your name on Zoom. This helps everybody sort of know who's present at the meetings. If you are joining via phone, we ask that you sync your phone and video audio to help streamline attendance taking and just have a better sense of who's present. And so you can do this by clicking on your audio settings, expanding those with the little arrow next to the microphone, and then following the prompts on your screen to combine your audio. So once again, here's the reminder around the naming convention. So for CSC members, using the CSC or the R if you're a resident. And for other participants, again, indicating your organizational affiliation. And if you do need support renaming, feel free to reach out to one of us at Harder & Company, or you can also message members from the Air District. We're all happy to support with renaming and labeling for today's meeting. So once again, virtual meeting etiquette, we ask that you please stay on mute unless you're planning to speak. And if you are joining by phone, you can use *6 to mute and unmute respectively. We ask that you please raise your blue Zoom hand to ask a question during a presentation Q&A. So you can do this by in your sort of menu following the options for raising your hand. But if you are calling in, you can press *9 to raise it and to lower it respectively. Residents in the stipend program should stay for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. So for today's 2-hour engagement, that would be 90 minutes. And once again, we also ask that you please state your name before sharing a comment to allow for a smooth interpretation of our conversation. So these are the group agreements that the CSC has developed together to encourage an inclusive meeting process. So the first one is to help achieve the meeting goals, really focusing on solutions, opportunities, and a productive dialogue. And the second one is to let everybody participate. So stepping up or stepping back if you tend to speak more or less. Being civil and respectful. So it's okay to disagree, but please be respectful, empathetic, and civil. Staying on point and on time. So keeping comments brief and to the point, especially to allow everybody to participate. So if we're seeing that there's a lot of folks who have questions or are eager to engage in conversation, really being mindful of allowing everybody to sort of chime in by keeping comments brief. If there is a disagreement that you have with somebody, please focus on the problem and don't attack the person. So it is okay to respectfully challenge ideas or outcomes, but never attack a person, really honoring everybody's humanity and dignity. And then finally, we know how important it is to seek common ground as a collective. So building consensus and finding shared values helps us achieve better results together. Today's agenda, as I mentioned, is quite a diverse one, and we're really excited to facilitate the various items on here. So what we're doing right now is the welcome and introductions, and we'll transition to the standard agenda item around action items tracker updates. And then we'll spend some time debriefing the in-person meeting to gather your feedback on your experience, including how you might want that to change in the future. Then there will be two presentations, one around quarterly air monitoring updates at 5:35, and at 6:15 there will be SERP implementation updates. The sort of subcommittee updates will be provided via email today, just because of how many items we have in today's agenda. So we will transition after the presentations into wrap up and next steps and public comment. So you can look out for any subcommittee or other agency updates via email after today's meeting. So that is sort of an overview of the process for today's meeting. Sort of with that understanding, I'd like to hand it over to the Air District for any welcoming remarks for today's meeting.
Thank you, Gabby. This is Jessica from the Air District. I want to welcome you all and thank you all for joining us. I am still riding the feeling of seeing many of you in person, and I'm really looking forward to our activity that will follow our action items this morning, not only to reflect on what we learned in person, but also provide you feedback on how we're using what you've given us to move forward. So I just am very grateful for the momentum I think we've created over the past several meetings. I think there's a really big sense, and hopefully you feel it tonight, of a lot of things moving forward. And so I'll just really look forward to working with you all, and just thank you all for sharing your time with us. Thank you. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you, Jess. This is Gabby. And yeah, just really want to reiterate how wonderful it was to see everybody last month and how much we enjoyed getting to know you in that the real physical space. And so thank you to those of you who were able to join, and we're really excited to continue many of the conversations and the work that was inspired from the last meeting. Before we transition to our first official agenda item, I do want to remind you that if you are interested in supporting the design of the facilitation or any facilitation components of these meetings, we invite you to volunteer to be a community co-host for future months. So last year, Tanisha graciously offered to support and did a wonderful job engaging you all in some brainstorming and ideation. And so if you're interested in that sort of thing and want to have more of a role in these meetings, we really encourage you to consider volunteering to be a co-host for a future month. Again, it's totally voluntary. So if it's something you have the capacity for and there's interest there, we'd love to collaborate with you. With that said, as you all are familiar with, the action items tracker is one of our ongoing agenda items, and this tool really helps us to develop transparency and accountability between what we're seeing as items that require action during these meetings, and helps us move toward progress in implementing the suggestions and ideas you all bring forward. So during our last in-person meeting, I did want to sort of demystify how those action items were tracked, because I know that the process was a little bit different than what we usually see in these virtual meetings. So as each station was providing spotlights during the in-person meeting, our team was jotting down notes to ensure that any updates that were provided by the AD were being noted if there was an opportunity for an action item around those. And we also walked around during the meeting and asked, the different stations if there were any action items coming up or any requests coming up from the air district. So we noted some of those down. So some of these action items that you'll see today are already underway, and others are going to take a little bit more time to operationalize, especially as you remember our last meeting really building upon community connections and very unique outreach strategies. So just want to make you aware of the uniqueness of some of the action items that came out of the in-person meeting. And again, as a reminder, at the end of every meeting, we share these action items and encourage you all to add any or kind of amend any that we share to make sure that they're accurately capturing our conversation. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie to provide some of the updates for today. And as she's providing those updates, please feel free to pause and ask for clarification at any point.
Hi everyone, this is Stephanie. Good evening. And I just also wanted to echo Gabby and Jessica's sentiment. It was so great seeing you all last month. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, like Gabby is saying, these are action items that mostly came from our in-person meeting, but a couple of them did come from some previous meetings as well that we kind of resolved at that in-person meeting. All right, can I get a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Perfect. So as I think we do this pretty regularly, but I'll just remind folks, we'll go over the pending items first. And the first three that came out of the in-person meeting are all related to the tables that you all participated and provided feedback on at the in-person meeting. The first is just generally with all the feedback that we will follow up on all the contacts and kind of strategies that you all recommended. And the second two are more specifically about looking into a billboard in the community and then also looking into some app alerts. And I'll just kind of share generally that we really appreciated all the feedback and did transcribe them into notes that are linked here. And just generally with all of these, our Air District outreach team is looking into all of this feedback, and we'll share updates as we continue to work on them. Moving on to our completed items. The first, just like I mentioned a second ago, the Air District did type up the notes from the meeting and they are available. And so I'll just actually open them up so folks can see them. It's in a Jamboard, which I think we're pretty familiar with at this point. And so you can kind of toggle through. They're all listed, broken up by the different tables, and they have the questions listed along with the suggestions that folks put on the little Post-it notes. So you all are welcome to kind of peruse and take a look at those notes. And then also it's an editable Jamboard, so you can also add new suggestions as well. Just continuing on with the completed items, there was also a request for the Air District to connect with Councilmember Kimberly Wamesley that was at the meeting. So we did connect with her, and we will still continue to connect with the council member just on opportunities and upcoming meetings in which we can collaborate and just do outreach on our AB617 program. This next item, the facilitation team is to solicit feedback on the in-person meeting, not quite addressed yet, but it will be done at the end of the meeting. The next exercise here will be Harder & Company leading us through this exercise. There was also a request to send out an email reminder about the UC Davis research study, which we did following the meeting. And these last couple are from previous meetings, but one was to provide weather conditions at the next air monitoring update. Tonight we will be having an update, and there you will see incorporated into that presentation meteorological conditions in this air monitoring update. And these last two items here are related to our EV charging infrastructure measure. And we did want to provide some clarity around one of the items, and that I'm glad Gabby kind of walked us through the purpose of the action items. This is one of the ones, this 33.3, in which I just wanted to clarify this does say that, we paused applications, but I wanted to clarify that, we still have been open and taking applications, although there hasn't necessarily been interest. And so at this last in-person meeting, we did have an exercise to get feedback from folks, and we just wanted to give the update that our grants team does have all of that wonderful feedback, and they're looking into either, the suggestions that you all had, or if you put like a certain area, we're looking into different businesses that we can reach out to. And so those are all the updates I had about the action items. I'm happy to take any questions now or else throughout the meeting.
Thank you, Stephanie. This is Gabby, and just checking the chat. I'm not seeing any questions so far, but opening it up to see if anybody present like to ask a question at this time before transitioning to our next item? All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie. I think we can transition to this next item. So as we all have expressed, there's a lot of gratitude both from our facilitation team as well as the Air District, both for the opportunity to be together in person, but also just for the space to really hear, connect with each other and learn from each other. And one thing that we always seek as facilitators is, to gather feedback to improve and refine our monthly engagements together. Historically, this would happen at agenda setting meetings, but as you all might remember, we did kind of a strategic quarterly planning session. And so, to be more inclusive of folks who are able to attend these meetings versus those planning meetings. So because of that, we are seeking your feedback in this space to be able to gather feedback from more folks who are able to engage at these monthly CSC meetings as opposed to the agenda setting meetings, and generally just to learn about your experience, both good and the bad, right? And so what we'd like to do is break out into smaller groups. We find that works really well to be able to hear from more folks. And so we want to hear from everybody for this piece. And so we're going to break out into groups, and we'd have, I think we're a little bit earlier on time. So we'd have between 10 and 15 minutes in those groups to discuss a few questions together, including what worked well at the meeting, what could have been improved, and what's something that you're looking forward to after the in-person meeting. So those are the three topics that we're going to discuss together. And I'm just going to share my screen to show you that behind the scenes, your facilitators will be jotting down high-level notes and reflections that you're sharing. So you won't have to worry about typing anything anywhere, but we will be kind of adding some of these reflections into the Jamboard so that we are systematically capturing your input around this. And so just to kind of let you know, we want to have the groups be a little bit more manageable in size. So the facilitators that will be facilitating these conversations will be myself, Dr. Amy Ramos, Stephanie from the Air District, as well as Jessica from the Air District. So one of us will be in a room in conversation with you. And we will get those open in just a few minutes. If you have any questions or you need any technical support, please feel free to note that in the chat as we kind of set this up. And to those of you who are watching our live broadcast, fortunately, this is a piece where you may not be able to engage, but we'll come back and share some reflections as a group. So before we break those out, I'm just going to check to see if there are any questions in the chat. And I will see if anybody has any questions verbally that they'd like to ask.
Gabby, I just have a clarifying question. This is Amy. We are going to move all the CSC members and residents. Would we want to leave all the agency folks will stay in the main channel so they can have a break? Or we would like to include them also in the debrief?
That is a great question, Amy. I think from my perspective, it might be helpful to include the folks and just know if you did get a chance to participate in the meeting, please chime in with your considerations. And if you didn't, maybe this is more of a listening role that you play, or you can choose to opt out of the room, come back to the main room and just wait. Is there agreement around that? How do folks feel about that approach? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and open up the breakout groups if there are no questions so that we can begin our debrief. All right, so there we go. I will join in just a moment. I think everybody's making their way in. Oh, you're muted, Amy.
Steph, you are in the room with your name, so it'd be this. You should see one.
You can just click the menu on the bottom since you're a co-host and you click join.
Oh, I see.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm listed. Sorry, I saw close all rooms and I was like, I'm not going to touch that one. Um, I'm
And
sorry,
then
oh, I see.
it should
Awesome.
have your name on it. Do you see
Yep.
it?
See you all in a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna join as well, Amy.
Okay, perfect. And then Brian, I'm gonna put you in a room as well.
Oh, you know what? I wasn't able
You
to
want to
make,
stay?
I wasn't
Perfect,
able to make the meeting, so I don't want to, yeah.
perfect. I think
Yeah.
all of you here were not able to make the meeting. So I'll have you, Bobby, if you all want to, as a resident, if you want to chime in, feel free to join. So we'll be back momentarily. So Maricela, if you could show the screen so that folks know that we're, breaking for 10 minutes, I will be back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Welcome back to those who have transitioned back. I think there's just a few seconds left of the breakout group, so the rest of the groups will come back in just a few. I think we actually have everyone back at this point. Let me just confirm. Just give it a few more seconds here. I hope for those of you who are back, I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that it was engaging and there's something that you took away from the discussion. All right, well, I think everybody's back. This is Gabby. We have just about 2 minutes before we need to transition to the next agenda item. So what I want to do just briefly is share my screen so you can see what is reflected on the Jamboard, and so you can get a general kind of gist of what everybody shared. And what I will do is ask each of the facilitators just to share one thing that they took away from the discussion with their group. I can go ahead and kick us off. So my group was with Doug and Leonard, and I think one thing I took away from it is that being in person seemed to be more conducive to learning and kind of very hands-on learning styles. And so that's something that I think both Leonard and Doug expressed in different ways as something that worked really well for them and that they enjoyed about in-person engagements. And maybe handing it over to Amy to see if there's any key takeaway that you'd like to share from your group.
Yeah, in our group, we had Margot, Ned, and Mary, and they reflected on many great things, like that the in-person meeting provided an opportunity to get to know each other, have interactions that we just can't have on Zoom. So for example, being able to learn about some of the things that are happening with the people that are in the room, as opposed to just the things that are on the action items or on the agenda items, because there's that meet and greet opportunity. Thinking about improvement, folks talked about maybe making sure that we have enough time to process all of the content that's there. So they talked about how the air monitoring van was really helpful and resourceful, maybe having more time to interact with the van. And then in the future, I think they left feeling really energized. They learned a lot, and that it created a lot of action or a lot of momentum to move towards action. Folks talked about how now they have some work to do in terms of outreach and engagement, figuring out where the EV chargers need to go. And there was a lot of excitement about really building that toolbox that they started to build and solidified in the in-person meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Amy, and thank you to Amy's group for sharing your reflections. Stephanie, would you like to share some key takeaways with us next?
Sure, this is Stephanie. I'll just share that generally we could all see that we had some really shared sentiments. I'd make a note and then see another note. Something that I'll share that I think I didn't see necessarily. I saw kind of similar, but maybe a specific suggestion is potentially. I think some folks did feel like we hadn't seen each other in such a long time that a lot of folks did want to, of course, spend the time saying hi and getting, greeting each other, catching up. And so a suggestion our group had is a pre-networking or social hour in which folks could maybe have the dedicated time and space to connect and feel that they've, adequately said hi to folks before jumping into the meeting.
This is Gabby. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that suggestion.
Oh, this is Stephanie. My group had Florence, Debbie, SV, and then Karina from CARB.
Awesome, thank you. And Jess, would you like to share a few reflections?
I would love to. My group was Jennifer, Cynthia, Ned, I'm like looking around the room, Cole from my team, Jason from the port, Tanisha. Did I miss anyone? I probably did. I'm like looking around the room, but we had a great discussion. It sounds like a lot of what we shared was also shared kind of among all of the groups. A couple of highlights. was just, I think, the continued sentiment that in-person was great, and maybe just continuing to look for opportunities to include more in-person meetings. And one of the suggestions that came out of the end of our discussion was really building on the benefit we have of having so many subcommittees, that maybe we can really use our CSC time as more updates from subcommittees. And if that's the case, then maybe we only have to meet in person every so often, but it's when we do, it's that very interactive space. We also, just a couple of other things, as some folks mentioned, that maybe a little bit, because we were all together, maybe some of the interaction or some of the activity could have been all together rather than so separate and so much kind of like free flowing time on your own at the different spaces. And then one other thing I saw, just so that folks know, but we're definitely, some things that I'm already seeing on the improve that we want to keep in mind is we definitely also don't want to waste food. Most of the food was packed up and sent home with other folks. So I want you to assure, if you left and there was so much food out, we did not throw it away, but it's definitely just a good reminder to continually think about that. It's such an important thing. And I just wanted to highlight that. But thank you.
This is Gabby. Thank you, Jess, for sharing, and thank you to Jess's group for sharing those reflections with her in that space. So again, thank you all for sharing your feedback, and rest assured that we will be taking all of these considerations into future in-person engagements, how we design those, the structure of those, things that we keep and things that we change. And so appreciate you all being so candid with us. At this time, I'd like to transition us to our next agenda item, which will be the quarterly air monitoring updates from Air District staff. So Cole will be presenting, and they'll be providing us with updates on air monitoring data collection and analysis, as well as the status of community air monitoring network implementation. The April in-person CSC meeting led to this great connection with the city council member too. And so I think there's already some connections around deploying an air monitor and thinking about opportunities to leverage those connections. So that is exciting. And I believe the Air District is exploring that as well. So we're looking forward to these updates and encourage you to ask questions using the chat. And I believe the Air District will be pausing at strategic intervals to allow you to jump in with questions. So please feel free to use the chat, raise your hand, or signal, however is most accessible to you, to let us know if you have any questions throughout the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Cole.
Thank you, Gabby. Good evening, everyone. Really enjoyed the feedback from the in-person meeting. Really enjoyed hearing everyone's interest in air monitoring. So that's what I have for you today. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, can everyone see the presentation? Awesome.
We can see it.
Thank you. Okay, my name's Cole Hutton. I'm a senior air quality specialist here at the district, and I'm going to update you guys on what's been going on in the Stockton community as far as air monitoring. So to get us started, this is our updated map of the implementation status in the Stockton community. Not a lot of updates since the last meeting. Most of the monitors are implemented in the community, still working on a lease agreement at the Edible Schoolyard project and an update at the Taft Community Center. But you can see we have what is that, 6 monitors installed throughout the community. And you can see the locations here on the map. And I'll get into some photos of the trailers and our permanent monitors in the van as well that some of us got to see at the meeting, which was a really cool update that I heard. Here's one of our permanent monitors, which are deployed throughout Stockton. You've probably seen these before if you've attended an air monitoring update meeting. And then the next one is our trailer. And then following that is our air monitoring van.
I might pause here, just really quickly go back to the van. I forgot to tell folks that this is so exciting. This is what the van looks like now, and it definitely did not look like that when you all saw it. We have a new wrap for the vans, and we just thought it was important that folks know what's happening in them. So I just wanted to pause and brag about it because it looks so neat, and we're so grateful for it.
Thank you, Jessica. I was going to mention that, but I didn't know if it was already been improved or not. Okay, so the key takeaways from January through March this year that you're going to see throughout this presentation are compared to 2022 at University Park. And we used University Park because they had a full data set for the year 2022. And comparing that to the community sites, PM 2.5 concentrations were lower than the previous year. And then PM 2.5 concentrations January through March in 2023 were heavily influenced by meteorological conditions, no major events or anything like that. So meteorology really was a driving force on our air quality throughout this first 3 months. And then VOCs that were detected remained under health thresholds, which I'll get into later on in the presentation. And then the majority of hourly real-time outdoor activity risk, or ROAR, levels based on community air quality were outdoor activity okay for all, which means good air quality. So that's good to hear. Any questions at this point? No, we haven't gotten into much, but okay. This is the interactive map that's always available on our website. And from the feedback that I just saw from the breakout rooms, there was some comments on getting to know the air monitoring data better. And I think this interactive map and our website in general, the AB617 website, is a great way to check out our weekly air monitoring reports as well as our quarterly air monitoring reports, and to get you more familiar with the data that's coming through. So this is our ROAR guidelines. Mentioned this previously, the real-time outdoor activity risk, and you can see the daily PM 2.5 concentrations associated with the levels of concern. And as I said, the majority were in the good category, which is 0 to 12 micrograms. And you can see on the right here, the level 1 outdoor activity okay for all. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the data. Here for the past 3 months, January through March 2023, this is the PM 2.5 daily average concentration comparison. And you can see for the majority of these first 3 months, air quality was green, good air quality, and that's for the daily average. You can see some moderate as well, and then just a few days of USG, and that was during a time of very stable conditions with poor dispersion, and that usually leads to higher PM 2.5 concentrations. And another thing to note is January to February, you know, it's coming off of our winter months, which meteorology wise is a less dispersive time. So we usually see higher PM 2.5 concentrations. And you can see as we get into March, things began to clean up. So breaking down the PM 2.5 daily average comparison, you can see we had just a couple days over the standard, but throughout the quarter, good air quality, and you can see stable meteorological conditions from that late January to early February period that led to those higher PM 2.5 concentrations. And on the upper right, we broke down each hour on that peak day, just to show you really the ROAR levels throughout the day that were experienced. And you can see the majority was that 36 to 55 microgram range. That's ROAR level 3, but only a few hours of level 4 and 5 that really bumped up that 24-hour concentration. So throughout the day, not that bad. It's only a few hours that really pushed it over that standard. But throughout the quarter, the majority was good air quality. And we break this down further at each sites on the next few slides. But are there any questions about the 24-hour average?
This is Gabby. Cole, I'm wondering if you can, just so everybody knows, describe what the ROAR acronym stands for. And then
Yeah.
I see Margot has a question after.
I'll go back to it. Real-time outdoor activity risk. So this is an hourly metric for air quality as opposed to AQI, which is a 24-hour metric for air quality.
Thank you, Cole. This is Gabby. I'm going to hand it over to Margot to share her comment.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I think you said it was meteorological activity that caused those spikes. Can you kind of tell us what activity there was? What was the weather? What was going on?
Yeah. So in January and February, we had a few long periods of stagnation, so high pressure over the valley, and especially in the wintertime, if there's high pressure overhead, I'm trying not to get too technical, but we have temperature inversions over the valley, which cause particulate matter to drop to the surface. You know, there's no mixing as we would get with a low pressure system or a storm that would vertically mix PM out of the valley. So high pressure really keeps things at the surface and pushes down essentially PM 2.5. And that's very common in the winter months, November to February. So really it's just stagnation, especially if you have stagnation for multiple days at a time. PM 2.5 tends to stack on top of each other in a sense, and those concentrations can increase. So you can see here on February, in between February 3rd and February 6th, that dip, that was a low pressure system that came in. And then again, on that upswing around the 9th of February was more high pressure or stagnation. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. That helps.
Thank you for your question, Margot. This is Gabby. I'm just noting, I think there's a clarification from Jess saying that it's like a lid or a cap over a bowl, AKA the valley. And it looks like Debbie has a question as well.
I do. I'm just wondering why, if that's the case, why there is some areas that are under the, and looks to be well under. So I'm looking at that one day that you pointed to, Stockton Fairgrounds was well under, and yet Hagen Museum and the Cal Water Tank were, it looks like Cal Water Tank, or
Yes.
University Park. It looks like Cal Water was well over. Why would that be? Just because of the area?
That's a great question. You know, it's hard to pinpoint one source, but it's really emissions around the monitor. The general meteorological conditions really start a trend, but as far as near the site or around certain areas of the community, it's really driven by what emissions are going on at that time or during that day. So that's why you see some sites under that standard and some sites over that standard.
And I'll just add, Cole is absolutely right. I think we have a couple slides later where we just talk about the efforts the district makes in trying to understand the differences between the sites as well.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. This is Gabby. I'm not seeing any additional questions on the chat at this time.
Okay, thank you, Gabby. I will move on. So the next slide, if I can get it there. Whoop. So this is an hourly breakdown throughout January through March. This is the hourly ROAR levels. Sets the hourly metric that I talked about previously. And you can see here on an hourly level, the majority of this quarter was in the green. the good air quality. And you can see even on those higher days, the majority of the day was in the moderate. And the biggest takeaway here is that the community is in line with each other. So each site is on that same trend. And that's really what tells us that this was meteorologically driven. So if you see huge spikes in certain areas, that could be, a different source, but throughout the quarter, it's really just a pattern of troughs and ridges throughout the quarter. Okay. This is another PM 2.5 daily average comparison, and this is a comparison to University Park in 2022. The reason we don't have a comparison for the community sites is an incomplete data set. So as we get more data and get a full year behind our belt with all of the community sites being deployed, we'll have a better comparison. But we compared it here to University Park, and you can see there January through March in 2022 is 14.7 micrograms. And looking at the community sites, they're well under that, which is good to see. So overall, it was a clean quarter, especially compared to last year. It's always good to see an improvement in air quality. Any questions on this slide?
This is Gabby, Mary Elizabeth. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Couldn't we pretty confidently conclude that this decrease in PM 2.5 is related to our intense rains that washed and washed and washed and washed our air rather than any change in reduction or related to emissions?
Yeah, we did have quite a few systems come through the first quarter of this year, and that's definitely a factor. That's why the main story of this quarter is meteorological conditions. I think it's always a combination of meteorology and what we're doing to help mitigate emission factors. But yes, it was a very, very good first quarter as far as weather.
I wonder if we could, this is Jess, and thank you. I agree with Cole and with, Mary's pointing out of how meteorology can both obviously decrease air quality conditions like Cole pointed out, but also improve air quality conditions. I'm wondering though, we obviously did see some spikes and peaks where we saw really high averages as well, as you can see here on the left-hand side. And I wonder as like a next step for the next time we do this, we can compare the highest average with the last, like with a comparable, maybe last quarter's highest average, just to show that even on peak days, are we seeing an improvement? Or on stable, maybe compare a stable day to a stable day, just to normalize for Mary's point for good or poor meteorological conditions.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I can definitely have that prepared next time. Any more questions on this slide? Thank you, Mary, for your question or your comment.
I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat at this moment.
Okay. And this is a monthly average comparison, again, to 2022 University Park, as well as within the community itself. And a similar trend, a reduction in PM compared to the 2022 quarter. You can see in March, University Park in 2022 was slightly lower than some sites, variable as we get into the springtime. But you can see some sites like Hagen Museum and Little Manila Center were lower. University Park in 2023 was slightly higher, as well as Cal Water Office and San Joaquin Fairgrounds. And those few days of those higher spikes probably had something to do with that. in the March time period, and that's really when emissions, comes to the forefront, when you see some higher concentrations in a time with more dispersive conditions like the springtime is. Okay. And then like Jess talked about, some of the efforts of helping, of investigating high PM 2.5. One of the big ones here at the district is surveillance and enforcement. We have inspectors and air monitoring operators that are looking for activity around communities, especially in the wintertime with our residential wood burning. They also respond to complaints or anybody having calls about any smoke that they see or something like that. So there's always surveillance and enforcement going on throughout the district, as well as lab analysis of the PM 2.5 air samples, like our VOC speciation, which I will get into on this next slide. So we can really break down, what's in that PM 2.5 to try and relate it to a source. So this is our VOC speciation summary. 8 samples were taken from January to March this year. And for methanol and acetaldehyde, the short-term impact, or the acute, and the long-term impact, or the annual REL, were all below the REL. So the reference exposure level, it's a health metric established by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard and Assessment. So these were all well under the RELs for this quarter. And you can see on the left-hand side of the table some potential sources of emission. And like I previously said, met conditions really had a hand in being dispersive for most of this quarter, which led to these low concentrations. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Here's some outreach that we do here at the district, how to give you guys, the community, some heads up on air quality, as well as outreach on upcoming storms or stagnation periods. We have our news releases are issued before known and expected high pollution days, like high winds or wildfires, as well as posting on social media like Facebook and Twitter to give the community heads up. And also schools participate in the Healthy Air Living School program. And just some more examples of how we get the word out about any type of stability or poor dispersion conditions, good dispersion conditions, as well as some information on current winter conditions are trapping PM 2.5, just kind of give you guys some insight on what's going on in our atmosphere. So these are always a great follow to get more insight and some heads up on current conditions. And then we have our air quality tools that are available. Our RAN, as well as Air Now and Purple Air as well. And then an exciting new development is AQView is now live. So CARB's AQView goals are to provide the latest up-to-date information on AB617 communities and community air monitoring efforts, and provide a single platform to view and access air quality data from different networks. So this is a great tool as well to check up on your local air quality throughout the community. And here's a quick snapshot of what the Stockton community looks like in AQView. 5 community air monitoring sites, PM 2.5 and SO2, and data is now available. So check it out if you would like. And the data is also an important note is the data can be downloaded. So. And now I have some questions for you guys. If you are willing to answer, have you ever received an alert about air quality? Do you think neighbors know how to check the air quality? How can you make sure people are better prepared to protect their health? So just some things to think about.
Thank you, Cole. This is Gabby. Before we transition onto this discussion portion, I saw Stephanie had her hand raised. Not sure if there's something you wanted to add.
Hi, this is Stephanie. And thanks Cole for bringing up those updates on AQView. I know we also have some CARB team members here. I see Emily in particular. And so I'm wondering if maybe we can spend some time. I think these are really great discussion questions, and we can maybe spend some time on these. And then we can, if we have, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time, but pass over to AQView to talk about their exciting updates.
Thank you, Stephanie. I was on a roll there. And thank you everyone for your time. I'll pass it over.
This is Gabby. I'm seeing a comment from Ned. So first off, some appreciation for your presentation. Ned noted that seems like good overall with improving results, and that we seem to be meeting the EPA PM 2.5 standards. So regarding the 3 questions, Ned says, I'm concerned about no monitoring around Washington School, Boggs Tract, and the port. Any update? And I guess maybe I'll go, and it seems like these are questions for you, so maybe one at a time. So yeah, any updates around Boggs Tract and the port of Stockton, as well as the Washington School?
Hi, this is Chai. Yeah, I can provide an update on that. So as far as for this location, we have we put into an agreement that has been signed along with the edible schoolyard, which is right around that area in the Boggs Tract. And so that's completed. Right now, we're just waiting for the electrical infrastructure to get placed into there. And this past few weeks and month here, they've been waiting for the ground to dry up a little bit, because what they're going to need to do is really dig under the street to provide power under there to the other section in order for us to place the air monitoring trailer over there. So we're hoping that soon here. I know it's been a while, but all the approval has been completed, and it's just a matter of getting that infrastructure built. So I think it's getting close, but we'll see how soon it's going to come here.
Chai, can you describe just briefly what is going at that site? Because I think it helps answer a little bit of Ned's third question, is in terms of monitoring for more than just 2.5.
Oh yeah, definitely. So this is our biggest air monitor, which is an air monitoring trailer that has a variety of sensors in there. Yeah, and it's definitely, it's going to be PM 2.5 along with BTEX, black carbon, and all of that. So we're going to have a lot of monitoring there, a lot of pollutants that we're going to be monitoring in that. So that's going to be one of the big ones that we hope that we can get in there that'll help explain a little bit more on what's going on within the area.
Thank you, Chai, for your input around that. There's another component of Ned's question here. So he said, we need to see the readings inside schools and homes compared to ambient. We need to know actual exposures to persons. Are there any data showing the relationship between ambient versus indoor exposure?
I can go ahead and start to answer that. I think to Ned's point, and I think those that have been in this process the whole time have heard Ned bring up, I think, this point a few different times. There are some efforts and some studies underway working with understanding air quality and filtration in schools. I don't want to put folks on the spot right here, but maybe I'll just note as an action item to connect and bring back to a future meeting some of the folks at OEHA and other groups that are doing some studies on that. Because there is, I know there is data, or the folks are, I should say, gathering data and doing those studies to understand those relationships.
Thank you. This is Gabby, and I think this question was already starting to be answered, but I'll just read it verbatim, so that folks on the live can also understand what the question was. So, regarding species of PM consisting of ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate apparently do not constitute much of a health risk, whereas exposure to organic carbon and elemental carbon may increase health risks. Also, ultrafine particles, specifically PM0.1. Do we have data on the components of measure PM? And I think, Chai, that you described a little bit around this, but not sure if there's anything else you would add.
Yeah, and that's actually a part of, once we get the trailer there, we will have the PM speciation, and in there you'll see the breakdown of it into the organic carbon, into the ammonium nitrate, and we'll see all that breakdown and even into further components even beyond that. So once the trailer gets in, we'll get that going.
Thank you, Chai. This is Gabby, just reading a couple more comments. So Jazzy mentioned, will labs be continuing to identify the VOCs? And Jessica responded that they will continue to collect and speciate VOCs. Oh, speciate, sorry. And then Kyle asked, CARB does have a program, or I guess this is a comment. Kyle mentioned that CARB does have a program related to indoor air quality, and the folks at CARB involved in this program may be another connection point worth exploring as a piece of the exposure puzzle. It sounds like Kyle doesn't know very much. It's far outside of his wheelhouse, but there's a link in the chat for folks who are interested in learning more about that. So those are all of the comments in the chat for now, but do want to open it up to see if there are any comments people wanted to offer verbally or any reflections you have about the data that was shared. All right, well, I'm not seeing any hands raised or unmute buttons pressed at the moment. But yeah, I know that Stephanie offered maybe that we could hand it over to CARB to share a little bit about AQView. So wondering if this feels like a good time to do that. All right.
This is Stephanie. Yeah, I do believe I scanned through our participants. I believe we have Emily and then also Yanju from the AQView team.
Yep. I'm happy to present if you guys are ready.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.
Sure thing. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. So, let's see. So first of all, I really appreciate the time to join you today. My name is Emily Gorey. I'm from the AQView team at CARB. And I just wanted to go over a live demo of our system. We're especially excited to announce our new mapping tool where you can view the air quality data on a map. Couple of comments about kind of our goals when we were building AQView. We really were interested in providing you with the most recent up-to-date information regarding AB617 monitoring and just information in general. And that was our primary original goal, but just in beginning the process of thinking about that and recognizing that there are just so many tools out there at this point, and there's data across the internet from different monitoring efforts, we really thought it was critical to bring all of those pieces together into one place for you, so that you don't have to visit multiple websites to get the information you're looking for. And so one of our major goals with AQView is to bring all of the data together from the various monitoring efforts going on throughout the state. And that way you have everything and it's convenient. And really just, we want to be able to not only provide that information, but provide it in a way that's very user-friendly, so that you can really get your exposure information in real time. And so we kept these things close to our heart. We thought about them while we were building AQView, and we hope that we can achieve these goals over time. They're pretty big goals, so it's going to take some effort, but we're building out tools that are very flexible and can hopefully accommodate all of those things in the future. So that's kind of just a background and introduction into AQView. But I know everybody wants to see the demo, so I will go ahead and dive into the demo now. So if you visit our webpage, aqview.arb.ca.gov, you'll come to this page, which is our homepage, and it kind of reviews at the top some of the things I just mentioned. It gives information on our system, gives information on some of the features that we have within, provides information on recent updates and patch notes. We have resources links, so you can better understand the data. And then at the bottom, there's this very bright yellow bar. And I want to point this out because this is actually our feedback tool. And we really are interested in hearing back from you if you have comments as you're starting to explore AQView and maybe exploring your data. We would love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. And also just what are we doing well and what can we do better? So if you click on this, I'll just show you very quickly. It takes you to the feedback tool, which we hope is easy to use as well. There's zoom in. There's a couple different buttons at the top where you can select the topic of whatever you want to give feedback on. So once again, to get to the feedback tool, you just go to the home page and scroll down to the bottom where it's yellow and click here. With that, I'll go ahead and switch over to the map. So at the very top of the screen, there's a menu with various links. One of them is for the map. So if you click here, it takes you straight to the air quality map that we built. So this is the AQView air quality map. It is currently focused on PM 2.5. And in the future, because that's kind of like the most common pollutant right now that people are measuring throughout the state. And then in the future, we plan to bring in more pollutants. So up here, you can see where it says PM 2.5. There will eventually be a drop down with more pollutants here, and you'll be able to switch around to select what you're looking for. A couple other simple features across the top. We have a color scale, which corresponds to the colors of the icons on the map. And this is AQI, the AQI color scale. And so you're able to kind of get some health context to the data that you're seeing on the map. And then we also have two toggles, controls here, because we wanted to include some extra icons and information. And one of those is fires. If there are wildfires going on or prescribed fires going on, those will be indicated by the flame icon, and you can turn these off if you would rather look at the data without them. The other icon that we have on the map are these blue balloons, and these represent the community locations. So again, you can toggle this on or off depending on what you're looking at. The next thing to point out is on the right, we have some information just that directly relates to the contents of the map to provide just additional resources and background. If you click on any of these, it will give you a little blurb and some resources that are related. So for example, some of the topics are PM 2.5, AQI, fires, things like that. You can learn more by sorting through those. The next thing, so the controls are like most other maps. Hopefully it's pretty intuitive, but you'll notice as you zoom in, those blue balloon icons actually become the community boundaries. So you can see the Stockton community here with its community boundary in blue, which you can toggle on and off as well. And when you click somewhere within this boundary, it will bring up information on the community as it relates to AB617. So it will provide information such as like what year you were selected for the program, as well as some other resources. And then at the bottom, it actually gives a nice summary of the different pollutants that are being monitored in your community. And so that's kind of like a nice way to see what kind of data are available. Maybe if you wanted to compare with another community, you could go and see what they're measuring versus what you're measuring, and things like that.
This is Gabby. Thank you, Emily, for providing this general overview of the map and AQView and some of the key components here. I think this is really helpful to have folks engaged in this space, especially for those who didn't get a chance to stop by the CARB booth at our in-person meeting. If it's okay with you, I don't know if there are any other key elements that you think are crucial to elevate, or if it's okay to transition to some other items as well, just making note of the allocated time that we have for this part of the agenda.
Yeah, let me just point out 2 more things then. 3 more things, but it'll be very quick. I can make it quick.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So if you click on one of the monitors, it will bring up more monitoring information, such as the current AQI and a couple hours back. So you can see how things are changing over time. It also gives additional information on what types of equipment were used and so on. So we wanted to be very transparent and provide as much information as possible. Also, a really cool feature, speaking of kind of the trends, you can click on up to 4 monitors on the map, and down here below the map, it will actually plot them for you. And you can see it defaults to 24 hours, but you can also look at the last week of data too to get a better understanding of how things have been changing over time. So it's kind of a nice tool to look at the trends. You can also easily save an image of your plot by pressing this save icon here. And then the last thing, I know I'm rushing, but the last thing I'd like to point out is just we do provide full data access. So if you go up to the top and press access data and click on the first option, which is continuous monitoring, this is where you can get you can download all of your data. Hopefully the download tool is pretty straightforward, but you can select, for example, your community, and it will bring up the available data and a date range that it's available over. And you'll be able to download all that data plus the latitude and longitude of sites, and like all of that metadata is available as well. So that's just a really brief overview of AQView, and I really appreciate the time to speak with you guys today. Thank you so much for your time.
This is Gabby. Thank you so much for that overview. Really appreciated having insights into the tool and more about how it works logistically and how folks can access the data. So at this time, just kind of taking note of we're a little bit over that first agenda item. So I think there's a few questions that the Air District is going to share in the chat for your consideration around the air monitoring updates that were provided today. So feel free to engage in conversation around those pieces. And I'm seeing a couple questions about AQView and wondering if CARB is able to respond to those on the chat as well.
Sure.
But with this, thank you. So I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Amy Ramos, to facilitate a couple of the next agenda items here.
Thank you, Gabby, and thank you, everyone. I had the pleasure of interacting with the tool. It has a lot of promising potential uses for the community, so I do encourage folks to download it, and looking forward to your responses on the chat. At this time, I'm going to transition us to talk a little bit about the SERP implementation updates. As you all know, one of the exciting community engagement SERP measures tends to be the tune in and tune up and the residential lawn and garden measure. So there's a lot of excitement about it. Raise your hand or show just a nod or a thumbs up. Have any of you been to these events that have been hosted? I see Debbie has. Anyone else been to maybe a tune in, tune up, or a lawn and garden event. All right, seeing a few thumbs. All right, so some of you have been to these events. So as we hear from the Air District about what's happening with these two CERT measures, please do keep in mind if you have any questions or any clarifying items, but this is a celebratory moment for the CSC, as the Air District, in particular Stephanie and Jeff, will provide us with an overview of some of the milestones that have been reached with this CERT measure. So at this point, you can share your screen and the control and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Amy. This is Stephanie. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And like Amy mentioned, we're going to be providing updates on some of the measures. Two specifically that were requested during our planning exercise was Tune In, Tune Up and Residential Lawn and Garden. But we also have some just other exciting updates about CERT measures that I think folks are interested in. And so I'll go ahead and lay that out here in this agenda. So we're actually going to talk about five measures that have exciting updates. One being our residential air filtration program, 2, our residential lawn and garden, Tune In, Tune Up vehicle repair, passenger vehicle replacement, as well as our urban greening and vegetative barriers measure. Just to kind of orient you all to the presentation, for each of these measures, we're going to provide a quick update, and then we're also going to ask for your feedback, and that feedback can either be a couple of discussion questions, a few of the measures will have that, or else an opportunity to provide feedback at a future subcommittee. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our first measure, residential air filtration. And I think as folks might remember, back at the end of the year, we did work in subcommittee to submit a project plan to CARB. And we also did bring on our San Joaquin County partners and they discussed some available opportunities in their weatherization program. And following that, we did in February of 2023. I know some folks that are actually in this meeting did attend, and we took this item to our district governing board, and it was approved in February of 2023. And once we got that approval, we released what's called a request for quotation. And the purpose of that is to look for different manufacturers to be able to provide units for this measure. I mean, we're really looking for a whole host of things. We want to make sure we're getting good pricing. We want to make sure that we can get enough vendors to work with us for kind of the volume of devices that we're looking to distribute in the community. And so that request for quotation is out now, and it was released in March of 2023 and is open. And the next steps will be to contract with the vendor and launch the program in June of 2023, which is really exciting. We do want to make sure we're kind of, I think all of us do know that unfortunately what's become so normal here are kind of seasons of wildfires. And so we really want to make sure that we're getting these units out to the community as soon as possible. And in addition to our AB617 program, we also did want to share really exciting news that at this district governing board meeting, we just heard so much feedback from many people, from our board members, from different community members, that there's just such a huge interest in this program valley-wide. And so we're super happy and excited to announce that we are looking to launch a valley-wide air filtration program, very similar to the pilot that happened last year, again, beginning also in June 2023. And so we're just looking forward to kind of in tandem with this AB617 program, also looking to support kind of the greater San Joaquin County in addition to the whole valley. And just some opportunities to provide feedback. We did have a subcommittee meeting last month, and we're looking to reschedule one based on the requests from the subcommittee ahead of this program opening in June. So we'll send out information for this meeting. With that, does anyone have any questions about residential air filtration? Gabby or Amy, I can't see the chat right now, but okay, I'm seeing maybe not a question at the moment.
Any questions right now?
Perfect. I'll keep moving. Feel free to pop any questions into the chat. Our next update is regarding our residential lawn and garden measure. And as a reminder to folks, this is a measure to replace gas-powered lawnmowers with electric equipment at no cost to residents in the AB617 community, and that's up to $500 per household. And as a reminder, in the SERP, there is $20,000 allocated for 50 mowers. I'm just going to walk through kind of some of the things that have been completed before I get to the current status. So this project plan has been approved by CARB since October of 2022. And we did very recently, just as I think spring is coming and people are starting to think about lawn care, we did issue a press release about the program, including our Stockton specific measure, which definitely it generated lots of interest in the community. We had folks follow up via like print, radio, and we on social media too, as well as on like on news stories, sorry, across the valley. And since then, overall, after that press release, we had 5 new applicants. And just generally with that whole measure, we have 13 mowers currently out to residents, and we have about 15K remaining for 37 mowers. And so just, I'm gonna pause here, and this is kind of an opportunity for you all to provide feedback. We have heard at some, at various meetings from CSC members, potential interest in looking into this measure and supporting it further. And so something that we did want to ask for feedback on is if there is CSC interest in shifting funding to this measure, which could allow for a larger event to take place, like a distribution event in which we also bring the dismantler to that event. So it's almost like a one-stop shop for participating in this measure, along with more concerted outreach. And then we're also open for these units that we have available, and hearing what you all have about different outreach efforts we could be pursuing. So I'll kind of pause there for those couple of questions, and happy to take any comments or responses via chat, or for folks to just kind of feel free to chime in.
So as folks are processing the question, just want to remind you that we're asking for the CSC's feedback and interest in shifting funding to this measure, which would allow for a larger event and a more concentrated outreach. And there's the potential to leverage this measure with another measure to make it a one-stop shop. So how do you all feel about that? Any reactions, clarifying questions from the CSC members? I see Margot has her hand raised. Did you want to clarify something, Jessica, before Margot asks her question?
I'll take questions. I'll just offer that I actually have a video we've never shared of what we've done in other communities with larger events where we distributed like hundreds of lawnmowers. And so I would love to hear from the community first. And then if folks are willing to give me about 60 seconds, I would love to share actually a video just to kind of put into context some of the stuff we've been talking about.
Wonderful. Then folks will get excited. Margot, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to see the video. And so on that slide that you had, it looked, was it a one-time, was the press release a one-time thing? Were the media and radio and social media outreach, were they one-time things, or were any of them ongoing? Like more frequent, like more than once?
That's a great question. I think initially, we regularly do social media releases, and that is always ongoing. And I think we do that pretty often. If you follow us on social media, I see it constantly. But this was a very concerted press release effort where local news sites picked it up and ran it on their social media as well as their print and their radio. And that was the most recent one-time thing. It says April, I believe it was like the 2nd or 3rd week of April. So it was just a few weeks ago. I did see the question in the chat from Bobby and Jazzy. I would like to address as well. This is just, if folks are interested, we have funding. This is not the meeting to do it because we have so many other quick updates, but if folks are just generally interested, we can come back to a meeting with a more spelled out version. We actually did this and folks voted no at the time, where we proposed shifting funding from some of the funding we had from not doing school air filtration. We still have a bunch of funding left from that. And so I just wanted to let you know that that's one of the efforts we can shift funding from. We do have a lot of measures where maybe the funding we originally allocated isn't being used, but we can just, if folks are generally interested in hearing that, we'll come back to a meeting with a spelled out proposal.
Any other questions? See a thumbs up from Bobby and Jazzy. Any opposition to the Air District creating those calculations and seeing what the allocation of resources would be. Okay, Debbie is interested. Mary Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. I thought that that there was additionally going to be some more money set aside for commercial. Because I'm telling you, you know, when I'm walking around, it's not people, you know, doing their yard. I mean, I'm talking about even, you know, like city stuff and, you know, just around apartment complexes and, you know, that there's more emissions coming from those. And I understand even that there is I know some growing momentum to ban gasoline lawn equipment because of their high emissions. So is that something that eventually the Valley Air District could do for us?
So to answer both the commercial, we have funding in the SERP also for commercial lawn and garden, and that is also a big effort we're trying to get folks in on. And yes, that we are trying to target, and we've heard feedback from you all on the folks to reach out to, and we're doing that right now. And the goal with incentives, as always, is to help folks, especially in low income communities. If they, you know, I'm certainly not currently aware of any pending super soon action, and it would probably be on the state to ban or do any action on gasoline powered. But in order to help folks that need it most transition to electric ahead of that, or transition to electric before they're just no longer able to purchase new ones, this is that type of effort that we would go through to give them electric equipment directly to residents. So this is one of those great measures that goes directly to residents and not to, you know, the municipalities or the businesses. And I see Margot's hand, and I'm queued up for the video if folks are interested. I don't want to take too much time though, so I'm also happy to just share a link.
Okay, I'll be really brief. I just, I like the idea of allocating our funding, but we have several things I think we'd like to look at potentially more money for, so I don't want to limit it. And I'm looking forward to the video.
Awesome. I will share it right now. No further ado. Oops.
Today, we're in the South Central Fresno community, which is part of AB617. As a part of this AB617 effort, one of the measures to help clean air quality is to exchange gas-powered lawnmowers for electric mowers.
This is an example of where, listening to the community, we hear what they need and work with them to provide brand new electric lawnmowers, scrapping old high-polluting lawnmowers, and bringing those air pollution reductions right into the home, right at the community level where it matters the most.
There's folks that were lined up here before the event. They know that the Air District puts on really good events that are beneficial to them personally, beneficial to the environment.
This is a great opportunity to show that small changes with the help and collaboration of government and private entities can yield public health results.
At that event, we exchanged 200 lawnmowers in just a few hours. So it was a really big event, and it also gave us an opportunity. Oh yes, thank you, Ned. Go Dodgers. We're picking up here. It gave us an opportunity to connect about other programs as well. So I know I don't want to take up time. I know Stephanie has other great updates, but it sounds like folks are open to the discussion, and we can bring that to a future meeting. And definitely thanks for the feedback.
Perfect. So go ahead, Stephanie. And Ned, I do see your comments on the chat. We're going to have Ned provide some updates on those comments and some more updates regarding some of the action that he's been working on after Stephanie's SERP update.
Thanks, Amy. Jess, the biggest point of contention of this video is your hat.
I couldn't focus after I saw that hat.
I know, it's a whole thing.
All right. Well, thanks, folks, for your feedback on that. And so moving right along, we wanted to also provide an update on Tune In, Tune Up, which is our vehicle repair measure. And again, as a reminder, the purpose of it would be to repair community resident vehicles through the Tune In, Tune Up program for up to $850. And they hold local events at the Stockton Fairgrounds. Again, and in the SERP, there's a total of $300K for community residents. And like Amy noted, just in terms of like asking folks who's been to these events, what we mean by extra is that it would be kind of in addition to the efforts that are happening through what Valley Can is already doing in the community. There have been 4 Tune In, Tune Up events in Stockton since 2020. And just some updates in terms of kind of things that have happened and will need to happen. We did have the project plan for this measure. It was reviewed by CARB and there was some feedback. And so we resubmitted for approval last month. And some next steps here is this will require a governing board approval to renew the contract to continue working with Valley Can, which we're set to do in June of 2023. And then just in terms of next steps with CARB's approval, we'll plan to work with Valley Can or Valley Clean Air Now to use additional funding specifically for vehicle repairs for residents in the boundary over the next 3 years. And so a question that we wanted to pose to you all to get feedback on is the CSC interested in the district and Valley Can hosting a community, AB617 resident only event? And then of course, just generally, are there any other outreach ideas that you have for this measure?
And I see Debbie has her hand raised. Please go ahead, Debbie.
Me? Is that okay?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, did you just call on me?
Oh, no, Debbie. Sorry, Nate.
Oh,
not yet.
okay.
Hold tight.
So on this, so how do we, if we have to use this on our own cars, let's say, how does a person apply to get help with this, to get a vehicle to pass smog if there's no event happening?
Great question. Nia, I don't know if you have an answer to that question.
Yeah, actually I do. My name is Nia with the Valley District. Currently you can call Valley Can online. They have an electronic process over the phone. You can contact them. They can they'll ask some questions for you, basic questions regarding eligibility. And if you're eligible, they'll walk you through the process of getting you a voucher, an electronic one too, and then you can go visit a small shop for repairs.
Perfect. Thank you. That was one of my questions. And just a suggestion that we could contact some of the smog shops in the area, let them know as outreach. Just, in the AB617, there are probably about 7 or so just in our 617 area, because I'm currently getting smogged here soon. So there are quite a few smog shops, and I suggest reaching out to them and telling them to reach out to their customers. Thank you very much for that information.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And Stephanie, I'm also seeing comments in the chat from Esperanza. So saying that we need an event like that here, a smaller version of what they do at the fairgrounds, Tune In, Tune Up event.
Thanks, SB. We're definitely noting that.
I just wanted to add to that. This is SB. We talked about this before, it being approved, and to do a smaller version. And we actually had Valley Can come to the outreach committee meeting, And so they said they could adapt it and then do a smaller version. So we were going to look at sites, and I think it'll just be really impactful and concise to get everybody out there and take care of everything at the same time. So that was a suggestion that we had previously with the outreach committee.
Thanks, SB.
Not seeing other questions and not hearing any opposition, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you all. And I'm going to share my screen again. The next measure that we did want to discuss is our residential vehicle replacement measure. And as a reminder to folks, this is to replace, for again, all of these for kind of folks within the boundary residents, replace their gas-powered vehicles for up to $12,000 with either a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle. And in the SERP, we do have $800,000 set aside for up to 65 vehicles. And we did want to share that we have submitted the project plan to CARB in April of 2023, so last month. So we'll look forward to either getting comments or receiving the approval for that in the near future. And something that we did want to ask folks is, again, speaking about Valley Can, in the past, they have held community events, like education events, where they set up in a specific location, and they talk to folks just to introduce them about the program, different vehicle models, and then also they're there and available to help folks apply for the program. And so we just wanted to see if CSC members are interested in launching these types of events, and if folks think people would be interested in having these somewhere in our AB617 community. And of course, similar to all the other measures, we're totally open to taking any other feedback for other outreach opportunities.
Yes.
Thanks,
Go
Everett.
ahead, Everett.
I'll just make the statement, yes.
Okay. And also getting support on the chat.
And I'm seeing some nodding too from folks. Not seeing any other folks. I think this is a clean and supported, like, yes, we need these events, and we hear that. Awesome. And certainly with all these project plans that just got submitted, we'll be sure to update folks when we do get the approval from CARB. Thanks, Jess. And just noting, Jess has left a note. We hope for CARB approval in the next month or so. I'm going to share my screen again for the last update we have for the group. And this is regarding our urban greening and vegetative barriers measures. Again, these are two separate measures to plant trees and install vegetative barriers around sources of concern to block pollution within the AB617 community. And again, so these are two separate measures that have $1 million each allocated in them. And as an update for folks, we have a very active tree subcommittee that's going on, but we did want to share just some updates. We had a request for proposal. So again, this was kind of the proposal that went out to seek an entity to implement these programs within the boundary. That did close in November of 2022. And after that, the subcommittee has had several meetings to review these proposals with the applicant and their project partners. And so for next steps, we did just receive today an updated final proposal from the applicant and their project partners, which by updated, these were actually, we did in the subcommittee receive lots of great feedback. And so these updates are just kind of to respond to the subcommittee and then also district feedback. And our district team is reviewing that now and is working with the applicants. Once we've kind of finalized this review and had a chance to send these materials out to the subcommittee to have time to review them, we'll plan to schedule the next subcommittee meeting. And so kind of the next opportunity to provide feedback is going to be the next subcommittee meeting to review these final proposals. So if folks are interested in weighing in on these two proposals, we definitely encourage you to attend this next subcommittee. With that, I'm happy to take any questions about any of the information that you've seen.
Looks like CARB is feeling the pressure to get those approval processes authorized as soon as possible, and they should be coming in the next month, according to Kyle and Brian. Pausing at this time for any questions for Stephanie for the Air District. Not seeing any, Stephanie. So hearing support, not hearing any opposition for all of the recommended changes that you presented on tonight. So we've noted those action items in our tracker, and I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you all. I'll pass back to you, Amy.
Thank you so much. And so for this next agenda item, we just have a couple updates from the community. I know Ned has been vigorously typing some of his updates to ensure that they get documented in today's chat. But promise to give Nate an opportunity to share some of the updates that he has. And if other agencies have any other updates, we do have a couple minutes for general updates. So at this time, I'm going to pass it to Nate to provide us with some updates.
Okay, and of course I put most of what I needed to say in the chat, but what I wanted everyone to know was I did retire from SUSD for a variety of different reasons, one of which I simply wanted to retire. I came out of retirement to work for SUSD. I'd been actually retired for almost 3 years before I went there. But I also want everyone to know that the last 2 months from February all through February, March, and April, my main work that I did there was to keep the electric bus program moving forward and to meet a whole series of deadlines. And I was able to reconstruct and then find all the documents for the entire program dating to December of 2019, put it all in beautiful, nice order in 4 different binders. And then I went to SUSD and we agreed that the finance department of SUSD and the budget department should actually monitor and be in charge of that program. So the fact that I've left doesn't change much because they were going to take it on from me anyway. What I was able to do with transportation, however, was upgrade the order for buses. We got bigger buses with more capacity for general education, and we got more buses included for special education, which is incredibly important. That all got done. And now the program is sitting in the good hands of the budget and finance director, Willie Gutierrez, and a wonderful new, really sharp grant writer for Stockton Unified. It was nearly brand new. And I was able to give them all the context for all the people I mentioned in the chat message, plus several more. So the program should be in very sound condition. And I'm also going to, as a retired citizen, I'm also going to follow up on it and monitor it and make sure they stay with it. And also, for many of you that have been around for a couple of years, I was in close contact with Gilbert Rosas with all the things that we were doing. So I believe the program will move forward, and Stockton Unified really needs that program to succeed with all the other challenges that district has recently come up with. So I believe, as I left there, I believe it became a very high priority within Stockton Unified to continue with and succeed with the electric bus program. So that's what I can say tonight. I'll try to give you an update next month. Thank you.
Hats off to Nate.
Congratulations, Nate, and you're getting a lot of congratulations and support on the chat. Make sure to read that before you sign off. We also have Jason from the Port of Stockton to provide us some updates today. I'd love to pass the mic to you, Jason.
All right, thank you very much. So as you all know, the port is continuing to replace our diesel equipment with the zero emission electric equipment. And to facilitate that goal, we've secured 6 fast chargers from the core voucher program. And we're also ordering 10 more fast chargers with funds awarded through the Energize program. So hopefully have those all installed very soon. So that will make our tenants and us be able to use these things more efficiently and not have to recharge them as much. The port has also applied for some community project funds through Harder's office. And that application seeks about $9.4 million for a bonnet capture and control system, which is designed to sit over a vessel's emission stack. And so hopefully that will help to significantly reduce emissions from the vessels at the port. And also on March 25th, the port held a Clean California Community Day where we had about 40 volunteers come, and SB and her group was there with Mary Elizabeth, the Sierra Club. And during that event, we removed about 9,000 pounds of trash from the levees on Roberts Island. So it's a really successful project. And I think we actually discouraged some would-be dumpers during that time. We saw some folks with some trucks, seemed like they were going to look around for places to dump the material, but kind of scared them off. So that was pretty good. Then on March 23rd, Nikola came to the port and held a showcase for their Class 8 hydrogen trucks and their electric trucks. And during that event, it seemed like some of our tenants were very interested in acquiring some hydrogen or electric trucks from them. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of our tenants using those type of vehicles in their facilities. And finally, the port's 2020 emission inventory is complete, and it's on our website for anyone to review. And then we're going to start our 2022 emission inventory soon. And as you all know, if anybody wants to take a tour of the port, just let Jeff or I know, and we'll be happy to schedule that.
Thank you so much for those updates, Jason. Any questions for Jason? All right, thank you. At this time, I'm going to pass it to Maricela from the Air District to provide us some general updates.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, actually. This is Maricela. I'm in the Outreach and Communications Department here at the district. And I just wanted to share that we are very thankful of all of the information that was shared during the in-person meeting. One of those being the Healthy Kids Day event that was happening at the YMCA. We had such great interactions with that community while we were there. We would say that about 90% of the people that we spoke to that day actually lived in that AB617 footprint for your area. So with that, we were able to share information on the lawnmower program, on Tune In, Tune Up, all the various programs that we have. So we thank you for all of that information. And that's it. And I'll take any questions if you guys have anything.
Florence, I see you came off mute. Any questions?
No, accidentally hit the button.
Got it. Happens. Thank you so much, Maricela. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for all the CSC members who were engaged tonight in the conversation, for all our speakers and providing us with multiple updates. There's a lot happening, a lot of momentum since our last meeting. Really appreciate you all providing us with some feedback about the last in-person meeting. As my colleague Gabby shared at the top of the meeting, we really have had a chance to prioritize agendas for each of the meetings on a quarterly basis, and we've prioritized when to go in person, when to have meetings via Zoom. And so with that said, our next meeting will definitely be via Zoom. I'm going to share my screen for a second. So you see here on my screen, our next meeting will be on June 7th at 5 p.m. As of right now, we don't have a agenda setting meeting because we engaged in the planning and prioritization of agenda items last time in March. And so we already have enough content for the June 7th meeting. However, if folks want to have that meeting, please do let the Air District know or our team know. And that meeting will be in person. I'm seeing that here it says North Hall, but it is not in person. It will be via Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen there. At this time, we would like to open it up for public comment. We have not had any of our public members ask any questions now, but if you do have questions, now is your time. And I'll ask my colleague Gabby to check to see if there's any questions on the live YouTube stream.
No questions on the live.
All right, so at this time, we're going to start wrapping up today's meeting. So as always, we take notes on the action items that you all have recommended and requested. We do take these action items live during the actual streaming. So, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we miss it. So as I read these action items, please do let us know if you have any modifications to any of the things that I will be sharing. Can you all see my screen there? Should I zoom in a little bit more?
Yeah, zooming in a bit, I think would help.
Okay. Let's see here. I normally don't share, so let me, here we go.
That's better, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me know. All right. So our first action item for tonight is conduct some follow-up analysis for PM2. That is, develop a comparison analysis that compares high peaks within a quarter to historical spikes from previous quarters, and do the same for most stable days. And that will be from the Air District's air monitoring team. Connect with agencies that are gathering data, exploring the relationship between indoor and outdoor air exposure, and have them present at the next CSC meeting. Potentially OEHA and CARB raised their hands or made comments during the chat that this might be something that they could do. Present to the CSC with a more detailed funding plan for electric lawn and garden equipment. In collaboration with CARB, with CARB approval, the Air District will work with Valley Can to see additional funding for vehicle repairs for residential living in the Stockton boundary. The Air District to conduct outreach about tune in, tune up with local smog check shops. The Air District to move forward with scheduling future events to support residents in applying for vehicle replacement, and that will be the Air District. Any modifications or any action items that our team may have missed?
Thank you, Amy. And I'm just going to share my screen one more time so that there's no confusion, and apologies for the typo earlier, but our next meeting is via Zoom. So just reiterating that that'll happen next month on June 7th, and we're meeting virtually once again.
This is Stephanie. Maybe if I can provide further clarification, because I also got the question today from another CSC member. All of our kind of future meetings will be via Zoom until we announce another in-person meeting. Maybe we'll just kind of say it like that. That way there's no confusion for folks.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, thank you for that clarification. And if things do change and folks want to have another agenda setting meeting in between the time, please do reach out. And for now, that concludes tonight's meeting. Thanks everyone for engaging. Really appreciate your time and dedication to this work. Have a wonderful evening.